last year. And you went down and did this a great trip to the polo places.
In Argentina.
In Argentina.
Yeah,
And that was when I missed it. I felt bad. So, again, we're talking to Jillian Vickers. Jillian Vickers is spelled Jillin, I-A-N.
Yes.
And Vickers. And you're upcountry... Makawao, yeah. And have been doing this for a long, long time.
This is my 25th anniversary of having my own barn. But I've actually been on Maui 30 years helping people with horses.
And we've been doing radio here for 30 years. I have. But I have never seen anyone do this trip to Mongolia. Number one, how did you find out about this huge, long race in Mongolia?
Well, I've been following something called the Mongolian Derby for years, which is a 600-mile race all on your own, more of a survivalist kind of a race. But you only use each horse for 40 kilometers rather than 80 kilometers, which is what we did. And the organizers of the Gobi Desert Cup began there and decided to start their own ride that shifted a little bit more into giving back to the community. And that's what attracted me to this ride, was the fact that it's a nonprofit, that all proceeds go back into the Mongolian nomadic community to help them maintain that lifestyle, which is being encroached upon as Ulaanbaatar, the capital, and technology move in. Their lifestyle is just organically being
infringed on.
Exactly.
Well, I being a horse fanatic, and I love watching shows on horses, and I remember seeing one recently that that they were trying to track down the original DNA from the Eohippus. The very, very first horse was about the size of a small dog, about the size of a dog, and the only place they found that was in Mongolia.
Yeah, the history of horses in Mongolia is unprecedented, and that's one of the reasons I was attracted there. I'm very attracted to all societies that have a strong horsemanship as their basis, in Mongolia.
Well, they honor the horse. The horse is like their life, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes, and that's very attractive to me. But actually how I found it was one of my clients sent me a link off of Instagram indicating that there was a couple spaces available left in the race due to some cancellations from people's health and illness. So I kind of jumped on that and ended up going with just 3 weeks notice.
Oh my gosh.
And
wow.
that was intense for sure. But what an experience.
It's like, get on it. Get I kept seeing your post about I'm getting ready for this long race. So obviously you can't get your own horse over there, so you must ride their horses, right?
You ride their horses, and they spend 3 or 4 months preparing. This time they prepared 160 horses for us. The nomads and the trainers came in from as far as 1,000 kilometers away to live with their families for the next 3 to 4 months and prepare all these horses for the riders that come from around the world. And these are moderately wild horses that are all between 12 and 14. They live in herds. They all live outside in herds. Uh-huh. No horses are fenced or stabled in Mongolia. Really? They are kept in large herds, and they're brought in each day. For this race, they were brought in each day for us to ride. Now, some of them are hobbled to keep them a little closer if they have a tendency to run off. But beyond that, they are loose, and then each morning at dawn, the herders bring them in. It's quite beautiful, actually.
I assume you've never been to Mongolia before.
This was my first of what I will hope to be many journeys to Mongolia. I have
Did you fly to China first and then take a separate plane?
I actually flew into Korea first and then took a plane. And Korean Air is amazing, by the way, for all you travelers. Yeah. Absolutely amazing. And just as an aside, it's easier to get in and out of Korea and Mongolia than it is Honolulu.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm shocked.
I wish too. With the passport and the TSA and all that.
Wow.
We're much more strict.
Yeah.
Than those countries.
Did you bring a saddle? Did you bring a bridle or anything? Did you bring any of your own tack?
I brought all of my own personal gear and stirrups that we were required to bring, a special type of stirrup for the long distance riding, which has a little cage on the front of it so you can ride
like a Western saddle.
Yeah, but with an actual front, kind of like those old tapaderos
like
the
you see in South
50s.
America even. They have those.
Yeah. And that's to block your foot from sliding through, because you can actually ride in athletic shoes and runners and tennis shoes, running shoes, because you get off the horse a lot and walk and run. And I had a lot of slower horses, so I did that.
I assumed you were on horseback the whole time, but no.
No. The Mongolian horses like to stay in their herds, and when you get separated from the herd, I, for instance, had several horses that were quite small and not terribly motivated to go fast. So if I was separated from the herd, they didn't want to keep going. So you'd have to kind of walk for a while with them or encourage them into a jog. And the term that they use in Mongolia to encourage their horses forward is chu or choo-choo. So I've noticed.
So you didn't run?
I walked. No, I couldn't run because the horse wouldn't run. I walked fast.
No, I mean the horse didn't run.
Yes, we did. We averaged, in the morning, we averaged between 14 and 19 kilometers an hour.
And that's
for the first 25. I don't know. They
lot.
did it in kilometers. It's a 25 miles for 40 kilometers.
Wow.
So we averaged about, again, 14 to 19 kilometers per hour for those first 40 kilometers.
And you just followed the pack, or how do you know?
I stayed with the pack for the most part, but they have the trails ribboned and marked, and it's a very well monitored ride with management and trainers and medical staff, a phenomenal medical staff. They were my good friends, yeah.
And I imagine some vets.
A couple wonderful vets, one from France, Anne, and the other one, Ian, is from Nambia.
So you camp out at night after you just camp out?
Yeah, we have a tent set. At each location there's a tent, and we have a tent mate. Mine was Sybil. She is from the UK, a film director from the UK, just phenomenal lady. And it was her first trail ride ever. Oh, my God. She's a dressage rider, and she got through it. It was amazing. Wonderful woman.
When did you start feeling the pains that would happen on a long ride?
There's some new pains that I got introduced to called chafing. And that started on the second day.
On your legs.
Yeah, and your legs and your bum. And
because
I learned
it's
about
their saddle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Beautiful saddles provided by a company in South Africa that makes endurance saddles for horses that do tend to fit these Mongolian horses really well because they're rather small.
How many hands are there? The size of ponies, basically, aren't they?
I would say 11 to 13 hands was what I rode.
And the legal size, I think, of a pony is 14.2. So that's
that's
a hand smaller than what you'd see as polo pony ponies.
Oh, yeah.
So they're small.
They're small, and they are mentally tough, and they have so much heart. They are absolutely fantastic
and you keep
creatures.
The same horse the whole run?
No, you do a new horse each day.
Oh, that's tough.
And you draw the horse from the night before, and then the vets organize the horses for you, the vets and the ride management, and you walk up to the pony lines where all the ponies are tied. It's like a clothesline about 6 feet high, and they're all tied to it, and they call out your number, and they bring up the horse, and the nomads saddle them. And these Mongolian horses you can only handle from the left side, and they don't hold still when you get on, and if you go to the right side, you could scare them.
Yeah.
They don't let you over there.
And it's a Western style saddle?
It's a combination of English and Western. It's got the swell at the front with no horn, and then kind of an English style seat with more of a Western cantle, and I put English stirrup leathers on mine to minimize the knee thing that you can get. Your knees can get real sore when the fenders don't bend very well.
Yeah.
So,
and what kind of bit?
They very odd that they have you carry the same bridle throughout, and they just adjust it to each horse, and it's made out of a cotton rope.
Really?
And then a little snaffle bit.
Like a halter? But it's a snaffle bit
and
with
then
a halter.
what they do is they use it as a halter, but they do so by just sliding the bit out of the mouth and let it rest under the horse's chin.
Whoa.
Very interesting. I learned so much about the horsemanship in Mongolia.
Are you in the same group every day? The same group of people?
Well, there was 21 riders, and we all start out together, and it really just depends on your horsepower. And I had horses that could go that first 25 at the front of the pack, but in most of the days, the horses that I drew were not really prepared to go fast the second half of the day. So
So you found them slowing down by the.
I slowed down and walked a big portion of the second half.
Did you expect that? I wouldn't have expected that.
I expected them to go a little bit more, but you get what you get. They're wonderful horses. I made good friends with all of them. A particular one I called Eeyore, and we jogged across that desert. That day it took us 10 hours. Most of the days it was 6, but Eeyore and I took 10.
10 hours.
But we got it done. There wasn't one day I didn't quit.
Pack it up, get fed.
You get in. Some days when we arrived in, we'd get on a bus and go another 80 kilometers to a next destination where our next group of horses and our tents were set up. Some days we rode into our tent and it stayed one more night. Yeah, some days we rode right into camp and the tents were reset up.
You didn't know. You just kind of whatever happened, huh?
Yeah, the management knew what was going on, but I was more concerned about just getting the horse through, and I knew at the end of each day whatever they had for us was fine. It's extremely well organized.
What'd you eat?
They hired a chef from one of the top restaurants in Ulaanbaatar. So the first couple days I didn't eat.
Where's Ulaanbaatar?
Ulaanbaatar is the capital of Mongolia.
Oh, I didn't know
and
that.
It's not quite a cosmopolitan city, but it's 18th largest city in the world.
Oh, really?
Really interesting. Absolutely worth a visit. Absolutely worth a visit. Yeah.
And so the chef prepared special meals for you every.
Phenomenal food.
Was it breakfast and dinner only?
Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They made it hot lunches if we had a loop ride that ended up back in camp for lunch. Mm-hmm. Which is really hard to get the horse to leave camp. They only did that once, I believe. And then just beautiful lunches, sandwiches, and phenomenal salads for the lunches.
Nice.
The dinners were always a soup, a salad, a beautiful meat dish, some sort of carb, and vegetables. And really nice food. Fermented mare's milk.
Now, I've seen pictures of them all living off the mare's milk, and I have to say, I've never had mare's milk before. What in the world does mare's milk taste like?
Well, because of the fermentation process, it's kind of like, that cocoa yo-yo probiotic stuff or kefir kind of a thing, but not as sweet. Thick. Yes. Not so thick either, but that tangy. Like a blue cheese. There's a tangy fermentedness to it. I actually like those flavors, so I was quite the fan of the fermented mare's milk, and the other stuff that they serve. It starts with an A. I can't quite remember what it's called, that is handed to people as a greeting. They are, without a doubt, the kindest people I've ever met in Mongolia.
What language do you need interpretation? Do they speak Chinese or
they speak Mongolian?
They speak Mongolian
and a couple words of English, and
had
it's just their nature.
Heard of aloha? When you said aloha to them, did they recognize that word?
No.
Oh, one of the few places in the world that doesn't know about aloha.
And one of the funny things is they had more aloha than Hawaiians have. It was crazy how kind they are.
Wow.
It was just wonderful. I'm absolutely in love with the Mongolian people and culture after this visit.
How long did it take you to do the whole run?
We had, I left here, I believe, on the 25th, and I returned on the 9th. Yeah.
But I mean the actual on horseback.
The race was 6 days. And then we had 2 days to prepare, where we did a 5-kilometer ride the first night and 15 kilometers the second night after that. And then we did each day at 80 kilometers, which is 50 miles.
Did you bring your own kit? I mean, who would have guessed? You got chafing. You've been riding all your life. You ride all kinds of horses. But
luckily, other people brought some products that were good for that, as well as the doctors had some antibiotic creams that were. Because
you got
I'm
some
sure
opens,
that's what,
some skin abrasions.
Everybody did that. Yeah, that was.
How about your
interesting. For me, groin soreness was a lot worse, and honestly, the left toe on the left foot got numb by about my feet would start to get numb about 22 kilometers out, and you have to mess around with all sorts of isometric exercises and things to help them out.
Did you post?
I posted, half seat, whatever it took. I sat on Eeyore. We did the Western Pleasure jog across the desert. So, yeah, I sat that one.
What other kind of horse would you compare the Mongolian riding to the way it feels? It's obviously probably not like the Passos. The Passos are the most, Peruvian Passos are the most comfortable. What would you?
They're pretty comfortable in their paces, and a couple of them were gated, and it felt a little bit like an Icelandic horse tolt. Quite smooth. I had a couple that were a little choppy, just a shorter strided horse, a little bit choppy, but not uncomfortable.
They keep their head down when
They keep their neck fairly level.
Yeah.
I had one, I called him Zoolander, because he just didn't turn left. And by the end of the ride, we found a left. But very often, there's no brakes and steering on these ponies when you first start, and everyone's galloping out. And you're galloping across the desert, and there's holes all over the place. And you're just like learning a whole new level of letting go of control. I can say I really learned to let go of some stuff while I was out on that desert on these horses.
Did you feel like they were Mustangs? Did you ever kind of the Mustang feeling?
I haven't handled a lot of Mustangs, but they have that wildness about them for sure, that you just are not in control. So the level of horsemanship has to take on a new and different type of communication.
What's it like under the stars at night in Mongolia?
It was stunningly beautiful. The first couple nights cold, and they did open ceremonies outside where all the Mongolians served us the mare's milk under the stars, and that was just lovely but freezing. First 2 nights.
It was really down to maybe like 40 degrees or something, or because Mongolia
probably 30s.
Mongolia is at the very top of China.
Yeah.
So you're very far north.
Yeah.
And is it in the hills, or what's it like?
We were on the edge of the hills most of the time. We didn't get into the hills much in this race. I know that there's more hills in the Mongolian Derby, which is a little bit longer, double the length. But we were more on the Gobi Desert. We were on the edge of the Gobi Desert for the first 2 days, and then right across the middle of the desert on the last couple. So that's where it was hot at night. Didn't even sleep in the sleeping bag, just right on top of it.
But in the beginning, it's down to 30. That's freezing almost.
Yeah.
And then it got, by the end, you were actually in the hot desert, and you could feel the difference.
Yeah.
So how do you dress for something like that?
In layers.
Yes, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, I rode with compression tights on underneath riding tights with compression socks that actually have electromagnetic ions in the socks, which really helped my legs.
I need to find it. That's amazing.
I can tell you that. It's called Back on Track is the company, and they make these products that I can't recommend the socks enough. And I was told by one of my mentors from the mainland, who's a top endurance racer there, Naomi, and she suggested I get these socks before I go.
You know who? I've got to let Chris Simmons. Chris, do you know Pat Simmons' wife? Chris Simmons?
I know her.
Pat Simmons from the Dubuque. They have a ranch up there in Haiku. Chris Simmons on a whole long endurance motorcycle ride on a Harley Davidson, an antique Harley Davidson, and she's going across country.
Oh, she would appreciate these
She would
for sure.
love those. I mean,
yes.
we got to see if we can send her some. She's still on the way. But yeah, all day long she's on that bike.
Yeah,
on an old bike, yeah.
Definitely like these, and probably the compression tights as well. They saved me for sure.
And you just knew about them from other people saying that?
I got a suggestion from the ride management on that one. They had a sponsor called Proforma Riding Gear, and they had a compression tight that goes underneath the riding tight, and I just thought I'd give it a try, and once I used it, I'm like, oh, this is it for the rest of the time.
It made a difference. But also it's warmer. Got to be warmer when you got out into the hot desert parts, right?
I think because the Proforma tights are so well ventilated that I didn't really feel that, but I'm certainly glad I had it. I don't think the ride would have been nearly as doable without those.
Were you wearing jeans or were you wearing riding breeches?
neither riding tights, which are a whole new level for long distance riding. The breeches with the suede would cause a rub on your legs. So you've got these incredible riding tights that don't have any seams. So you don't get any sort of friction or anything anywhere. And those went over the top of the compression tights in those socks.
So how did you pack for a trip like this? It must have been really hard to figure out what to bring.
It was, and the hardest part for me was I was all packed the night before, somewhat packed, mentally packed with all the stuff in piles, and I realized I didn't have any good rain gear. And I was so lucky that a friend of mine, Trish Maureen, had amazing rain gear from a ride she took in New Zealand, and she lent me that. We did not need it at all.
Didn't rain the whole time?
I saw some rain when we were driving back. We drove back 9 hours in these four-wheel drive, virtually Volkswagen bus four-wheel drive dune buggies with Mongolian drivers who are way worse than Argentinian drivers, gotta let you know.
9 hours is a long ride.
Yeah, only one flat tire.
Was it on a dirt road or a paved road? Or?
Probably an hour on a dirt road and the rest on a paved road, but we'd be driving along way too fast, and they'd suddenly swerve if they saw a little pothole or something. So it was like riding the wild mouse or something at the Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk. It was, yeah, that.
So it sounds like an adventure of a lifetime.
Absolute adventure of a lifetime. And it's just so nice to connect with the Mongolian people and that culture, and the fact that this ride is based on giving back to that was, again, what initially attracted me. And I'm so excited to continue to be a part of that with the ride.
Are you going to do it again?
I don't think I would do that particular race again. I will go back
just too much on the body.
Too much on the body, and for me, for what I want the adventure without calling it a race. No, I've found another adventure that I will do over there, and I was lucky enough to meet up with the guide the last night in Ulaanbaatar at our hotel in this high-end bar. He came strolling in. His name is Eric Cooper, I think, and he runs this adventure once a year where you ride horses for the first 50 kilometers into this kind of reserve area. Then you spend a few days learning how to handle birds of prey and eagles.
Oh, wow.
Then, if you're good with your eagle, you learn how to take your eagle on your shoulder while you're riding, and the eagle goes hunting. And then you ride into another 100 kilometers into the mountains. This is where you go into the mountains, and there's 40 families that are the last reindeer riders in the world.
Well, we're running out of time, but that's another whole.
That's the next one. Yeah, I'll take people on that one.
It sounds amazing. I'm so happy that you were able to come tell us. This is just beyond what you can see on Facebook. And I thank you for sharing your wonderful adventure, and congratulations on getting it done and doing it and having that.
Yeah, there's a saying in endurance, it's called "to finish is to win," and absolutely that is how I felt out there, is to just get her done and really enjoy the people, the countryside, and the horses. So
what's your website for people?
I don't really have a website. I'm not very techie.
Oh, okay, then Facebook.
Facebook, and my Instagram is Jillian Vickers, and I'm a little bit more on Instagram than Facebook, I think.
Well, thank you so much for coming in today, Jillian.
You are very welcome. Thank you for having me.
Aloha.
Aloha.